Hello, I'm Abhijit, and we are learning DevOps from the very foundational Linux operating system. And today is the fifth day of day zero phase. So let's dive into it. So today is the last day of foundations. Today we talk about users, about root, the account, and not the folder, the forward slash we were talking about earlier. We'll untangle about that and about system. So let's do a quick recall. What's the one character that tells you a path is absolute? It's forward slash. What does a tilde always mean? It means your home directory. It always means the user's home. What's the difference between cd dot dot and cd dot? Cd dot dot will take you up one directory in the previous directory, and cd dot will do nothing because dot is the current directory here wherever you are. Good. Linux is a multi-user by design. Many people or many automated services can each have their own account on the same machine. Their home directory, you have been living in yours all the week. Tilde slash home slash you. There you had your own files, your own permissions. Every user has a username. What? Whoami tells you that. And underneath that, a numeric user ID, a UID. You'll work with UIDs properly later. For now, just know username is a friendly label for a number the system actually tracks. Root is the one special account that can do anything. Read, write, delete any file, changes any setting, no restriction at all. Every other user is deliberately limited, so a mistake or compromised account can't destroy the whole system. And working directly as root all the time is genuinely dangerous. One typo in a root shell with no restrictions in your way can wipe something critical with no safety net. So the standard practice everywhere is log in as a normal user and use sudo to borrow root's power for exactly one command at a time with a password prompt each time as a speed bump. Sudo followed by comma or a command means do this one thing as root. Installing software normally needs root. For example, sudo dnf install something. That password prompt isn't the system being difficult. It's a deliberate pause before something powerful happens. Rule for this course, if a command needs sudo, read it twice before you press enter. That pause the entire safety mechanism. Here's a term from day one that probably feels like it is floating root file system. You now have the vocabulary for it. The file system is simply the actual disk or partition that gets mounted at slash, the physical home of the very tree you have been navigating all week with cd, ls, and paths. Root here means the same slash you already know, not the root user. Same word, two related meanings. Context tells you which one means what. Last idea. A Linux machine can boot into different targets. Think of it as how much of the system wakes up. You will meet immediately when we are visiting day one. Multi-user target, a full multi-user system with networking, services running, but no graphical desktop. This is what almost every real server runs on. Nobody pays for a GPU and a desktop environment on a machine nobody ever sits in front of. And graphical target, everything multi-user has plus a full desktop environment with Windows and a mouse. Probably what your own laptop boots into. Here's why this matters for you, your career specifically. Production servers are overwhelmingly multi-user target, text only. This is exactly why day zero with CLI comfort wasn't just practice for its own sake. It's the only interface most servers you will ever touch are going to give you. Who and what you are. Let's run it live. We will run who am I, confirm the username, and we will run ID. It will show us the UID group which we are in and all the groups we belong to. And finally, we will run sudo whoami. We'll have to enter the password and the output should say root. So we just ran one command as root without ever actually logging in as a root. So let's get into the lab. So you see, I ran whoami and I am student user. Then I ran id command. We see our UID is 1000 with the given name student. GID group ID is 1000 with the given name student. And which groups we are in? We are in 1000 student, our own group 10 wheel. So these two groups we are in. Let's try to run sudo who am I. It asks for a password and now it says root. So we saw that when I run any command with sudo, we get the root privileges and hence we are acting as a root. Cat etc shadow. This file stores passwords in hashes. Now let's try it with our normal user. We get a permission denied here. Now let's do sudo cat etc shadow and notice I am using absolute paths here. So we see the user student and our password in the hash. We'll go into what each field means what later. I was not sharing my terminal window, but let me run it again for you. Sudo cat etc shadow and we see our user student and the password in hash format here. So why should this specific file be locked down that tightly, right? Password hashes for every account on the machine. Now let's try one more thing. Let's try touch etc test file. Again, we get a permission denied here. Now let's do again with the sudo. Let's do ls-l etc test file. We see it has allowed us and with the root privileges as a root user, we are able to create the file. Now let's immediately clean up. So here, as you observed, I used sudo rm and the test file. So whenever you run any command in your mind, narrate each of those before you run it. That sudo is something that we are running using root and rm is something that is permanent. We do not have a undo there. Now in this next lab, let's see what is your our own target. So systemctl get defaults. So mine is a multi-user target. Let us log in to another system who has a single user target, a graphical target. My bad. Systemctl get default. So here we see the Ubuntu laptop that we are running this lab on is a graphical target. This is a Ubuntu laptop and this is having a graphical target. But for our lab purposes, we are using the multi-user target which is running on it, a virtual server. Let's again see systemctl get default shows us that we are on multi-user target. Now let's do a recap. Root is an account with no restrictions and it's not a place for today's session. Forward slash is also called root but in file system context, whereas root here in user context is an account. Sudo borrows root's power one command at a time deliberately. Root file system is the same slash we already know, mounted from an actual disk. And multi-user target versus graphical target is how much of the machine wakes up. Most servers are text only. Now your homework is run whoami and id command and write 3 or 4 sentences in your own words on why sudo matters. Like you are explaining it to a friend who's never touched a Linux operating system. Three questions. What does sudo actually do in one sentence? So sudo borrows root privileges to perform certain actions that are only performable by the root user, like installing softwares. Why is working directly as a root all the time risky? Because root has all the access. He can read, write, delete, edit any file on your system. That's the reason working directly as a root all the time is risky. And what's the difference between multi-user and graphical target? Multi-user target is text only. It has your all the configuration and all the softwares, but in command line format. And in graphical target, you get the window, you can interact with the system with the mouse, all the things that a desktop at your home does. So tomorrow we are going to start with the day one, what's a booting process in depth.